Greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. I'm your host Paul Spain, and with me in the studio today, Tim Warren from Ambit-AI. How are you, Tim?
Very good. Nice to meet you.
Great to have you on the show. Now, maybe you can fill listeners in where you fit into this big wide world of tech in New Zealand and startups and the like.
Yeah, sure. I'm, as you mentioned, Tim Warren. I'm co-founder and chief operating officer of a company called Ambit-AI, and we build conversational intelligence, so digital humans.
Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to delving into that later on the show and just hearing a little bit about where you're at and what sort of things you've been working on. But first up, thank you to our show partners: Sumo Logic, Vodafone, Spark, Vocus, HP and Samsung. And it's these companies that are getting behind the tech community in New Zealand, and one of the things that they do to support the tech community is support this show. So thanks for that support. Now let's jump into the news. There's always new things that pop up each week that I'm never quite expecting. One of the headlines that caught my attention was Google and their photos not being quite as private as they should have been. Photos and videos from people ending up getting seen by the wrong people. This was a bit of a surprise to me. I mean, you would kind of think a company of the scale of Google, any of these, the really, really big tech firms, that they would, really have security sort of, locked down around, what data people would see. But not quite the case. For a period last year in November, over four days, people who requested via Google a download your data export, if that included Google Photos content, then it was quite possible that they missed actually downloading all of their stuff, and they may have ended up downloading someone else's photos and videos.
It reminds me of that thing a couple of years ago where people found that their own photos were being used on Facebook ads.
Yes, yeah.
And then they found that they'd given their photos and were owned by Facebook. So, yeah, you've got to be pretty cautious of those terms and conditions.
Yeah, there's I guess a few aspects to this. One is with all these free consumer services, that over time we become more and more trusting in terms of what goes into them. I think people who have had photos where they're not wearing too much onto their devices have sometimes found those compromised, whether people have got their Apple account or what have you. But yeah, this is another case that I guess suggests caution around something that you might not want somebody else to see.
Oh, look, I think so.
Where you put it. But this obviously is not a good look.
Not a good look, and it really makes you think. With Google and other companies making a push for enterprise security type products and email. When do you trust them? Have you got a separate enterprise account, or is it just shuffled away an account with everyone else's? You don't really know. It's challenging. And look, I think also it should make us think within organisations, businesses, and enterprises, and not-for-profits and so on, that we can't be too relaxed either, right? And you've always got to take responsibility, and I love that phrase I heard just a while back, said if you're not paying, you're the product, and you've got to remember that. So if you're getting to use Facebook and a lot of Google, especially Gmail and Photos is all free, they're monetizing you, so you've got to work out what that is, and it's data, right? So but it's very hard for the average person to even interpret. Even you and me would struggle to get through 20, 30 pages of privacy statements, and you end up hitting OK because you want to use the convenience of it.
But I guess there's that reminder of the less that you pay for something or you trade for something, then you've got to be missing out on something compared to say the enterprise class software or cloud service that you're paying big bucks for. Not that the rule always applies, because mistakes still happen at the top end, but where things are being given away for free.
Yeah.
Look, there's going to be a little bit less effort that goes into making sure that those things are private, possibly, than those sort of enterprise systems where you can imagine if this had happened to Google or Microsoft or Amazon, on something that was real, business data that should have been completely, it wasn't a fault with the client, but with the cloud provider.
You do imagine
that
use. Maybe a Microsoft, because they started in the corporate world, they might have a different approach to it. There's a saying: there's three things you can't build into software if you don't put it in right at the beginning. You can't retrofit. Is logging, security, and privacy. And Google started off as a very different company, and they've rotated into managing enterprise data essentially. And I'm sure they've put some very good efforts with some good people in there. But if you're not baked in from day one, it's very hard to go and retrofit that stuff.
Well, I imagine Google would probably share a different viewpoint on it, but
maybe you should get them in here next time and they can talk through it.
Well, it's not the first time that's been suggested, so I have chatted with them recently, so we might look at inviting them on the show, and not to beat them up, but
but we got to learn. You got to learn from these companies as well, and I'm sure actually the people there are genuinely trying to do the right job, but it's a massive company with massive responsibility, and the measure is maybe how they respond to this kind of a thing.
Yeah, and look, I mean, it sounded like they closed up the loophole. It did take more than 2 months for it to for people to get alerted, which is kind of interesting. I'd be curious to know why it took that long. Did they know it initially, and then someone was freaking
doing
out
a damage
for 2 months
assessment,
and
right?
Trying to work out what was going on? Have we really closed the loophole and so on? But not an easy position to be in, and I think the reality is that it's really, really hard to get everything right 100% of the time, and I don't think you can look at any business and say they're perfect all the time. There's always one one or 100 or 1,000,000 shortcomings, depending on the size of your organisation in some form. It's always that work towards perfection, but the consequences can be pretty big. Now, news has come through that Amazon founder Jeff Bezos has committed $10 billion to try and address or fight climate change. Now, this caught my attention, I guess, for a few reasons, but I mean, it's just a staggering,
it's a good headline, isn't it?
Staggering amount of money, isn't it?
Maybe that's what you should call this one. $10 billion committed to. Clickbait, right?
Yep, could do.
Follows the tradition of people making a lot of money through an accumulation part of their life, and then maybe approaching life in a different way, and then redistributing. It's what Andrew Carnegie did 100 years ago. It's you find a bigger cause.
But I guess the bit that's pleasing to me is that we're seeing this become a lot more normal within the tech world, where some really, really big money is made. Thinking of the Gates Foundation, and you're right. It's not just those making a lot of money from tech, but it seems to be that a pretty large chunk now of those biggest earners have tech as being the enabler for that huge earning, and I think it's pleasing to see that they're giving it to good causes.
Yeah, that's right. I think really important as part of that is to look back and say, actually, how are we managing our business, and making sure that you're acting with
the best approaches throughout the business, because it's a pretty large business these days. So you can have a outsized impact by at least looking after your own backyard.
Yeah, and that's certainly got its challenges, I think, for Amazon and a lot of other companies of scale. I think Google and Microsoft and Facebook all come to mind in terms of some of their own internal battles and challenges they've had in terms of what does doing good look like? How do you run a business that's good,
sustainable?
And I think there are so many aspects to that, and if you've got a bunch of people within your organisation saying you shouldn't do X, and I think looking at the US where AI facial recognition is being used by governments, and there's quite a big sort of pushback against that. But I guess on that front you could sort of argue from different perspectives, right? Well, if governments don't have access to this stuff and other governments like China do and just go to a massive degree, I think there is a way to use these technologies in an appropriate and responsible place. And is it who makes those decisions? That's not always an easy one.
No, very different. I also think there's a bit of a philosophical thing in it as well. It's like, do you need to act in one way, wait till later in your life and then spend it out, or can you actually operate businesses in an alternative way where you can do good through the life of the business or through the life of the founder or whoever it might be, without waiting till some set point? You don't have to have $300 billion before you give away 10.
But I guess sometimes there's as you say, there's that sort of point in time where somebody gets it, and that's whatever their life's journey is, they've got to that point where they've clicked and realised, hold on, it's not all about me or whatever.
No.
Although you tend to think they must have some balance to have got to that level, but I guess it's different strokes for different folks. Now, one of the things I do like that tech has enabled around giving and donating, giving back, are these crowdfunding platforms where people can jump on and hear somebody's story, jump in and help them out in a reasonably easy way, and often on a somewhat sort of micro basis. Sometimes it's giving $1, sometimes it's giving $100 or $1,000, and you look and you sort of see that sometimes the averages are quite high for what get given to people with sort of certain needs, but it's I guess there's that immediate connection to the wallet. Heartstrings get pulled, you hear a story, hey, I could help with this, and through an online platform now money gets given. Now I guess some might argue, well, what about the people that aren't getting crowdfunded for? And I get that, but you can't help something you don't necessarily know about it.
Yeah, look, I think some people are aware of it. They leap into that area and they make the most of it, and it's a really interesting platform. I've participated in a handful. A couple of them have worked, a couple of them haven't worked quite so well. But you get something out of it that's not just financial, not just the return. You get a little bit of fun, and it's a little bit like like a flutter on the horse at the races. But I think it's a useful funding model where you're essentially saying, yes, actually we would support it. So it's got this market validation aspect to it as well. If you're selling some new brand of chocolate and there's something unique about it, whatever it is, and you can get 5,000 people supporting it, there's a reasonable market there. If you can't get a couple of hundred, then maybe you need to reconsider that brand. So, but it's seen and enabled the rise of these single product companies. Where all they do is they make one toothbrush, and they send you a toothbrush a month. And it's quite curious. I don't know if that is actually a sustainable business model, but if you're doing something quite well, Kickstarter can be very effective, and one of the greatest success stories out of Kickstarter was Oculus Rift, where they raised $1 million, and they got this headset working, this VR headset working, and within a couple of years it got the attention of Mark Zuckerberg, who bought it for $2 billion.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty good outcome, and that we didn't have these opportunities before.
No, I think it's really cool. Now, I think most listeners will have heard a fair bit of media coverage around it in Australia with fundraising to do with the fires there. Celeste Barber did this incredible online fundraise through Facebook, and I think he ended up with something like 52 million Australian dollars donated. But this is one of the cases where it's not quite clear how it will pan out, because the Facebook platform allows you, this is my understanding of it anyway, to nominate one party that the funds go to, and so she made whatever commitment around, money's going to be spent for equipment, it's going to be used to support varying sort of organisations, widows of firefighters who died battling things, and helping out a
broad variety of causes, right?
But the funds are going to the I think it's the New South Wales Rural Fire Service and Brigades Donation Fund, which annually normally gets less than $1 million.
Can you imagine?
And their trust deed says what they can do with the funds, which is basically buying some equipment for their area.
It's a lot of firefighting.
And so that sort of leaves a little bit of a challenge. So sometimes these tools aren't quite maybe used right, the right fit. And I mean, she probably just thought,
it's all done for the right reason, right?
We're gonna raise $500,000, and all sorts of people sort of jumped on board, and now these sort of lawyers, trying to figure out, well, how do we make this work?
I have this natural distrust of platforms simply for giving. There's something about those that seems to invite people to maybe use it for the wrong reasons, and I was turned off it in an example where I donated some money to someone who had some health issues through one of those platforms, and then I found they had some left over and they bought themselves a car and it didn't really ring true for me. So that's how I felt.
Yes, so it's interesting. So I guess that it's do what you're comfortable with. I think it's great that we can quickly jump on board and support things, but sometimes particularly if it's a lot of money,
read the fine print.
Doesn't really make so much difference if it's a small amount for you, but if you're putting in a large chunk, you want to know that it's going to get used appropriately, which is a little bit up in the air how that 50.
See how it goes. Maybe check in on that on the next episode.
Go. So we'll see what the outcome is. Now, headline came through saying that Uber Grocery, which is a service that Uber are offering in Australia at the moment, may well be coming to New Zealand in the not too distant future.
I need that. I was totally out of food last night. So
it would be pretty handy, wouldn't it? Because the supermarkets, they're geared up to a particular extent at the moment.
They're not very good at delivery.
So, I guess their service, they're trying to be competitive with each other. They're trying to keep the costs down, but they're paying somebody basically to run around and pick up your groceries. And if you're ordering through them, and this was something I talked a bit to Chris Quinn about with foodstuffs, and that's quite a lot of work. And I think if I'm going to place one of those orders, to make it work, and I haven't generally done that. I know we have done here at the office. You'd usually put in a reasonable sort of size order, because there's some sort of premium.
You don't just do
paying
it for the
delivery
toothpaste, right?
and so on. Not usually, and they're not geared up for those quick deliveries. So they work it into their day, and officially they have some people that go around and collect those, and then they can either put them in the lockers, and you can go and pick them up yourself, or you can have them delivered. And that stuff, I think the processes are improving, and it's good. But the Uber model, and I think there's been a small partnership in New Zealand that they've had with I think the night and day stores, and possibly one or two others in terms of petrol station type convenience stores. And so you can go in through Uber, and I think it's mostly sort of snacks. I don't think there's too much else on there, but you can pay I don't know, 4 times the normal price for a supermarket price for a bag of chips, or
not selling it to me,
whatever it is.
Yeah.
But you can get that thing quickly, and I'm not sure there's been much demand for that. But this gap is what you're talking about. Oh, I need a few items to cook dinner.
What someone said to me a couple of weeks ago. How about Uber
missing.
drinks?
Yeah. Well, we've had a level of that with deliveries, and I think we've talked through with a founder of a firm that was doing that in Auckland prior to Uber's arrival, that had partnered with. They had a model where they could go and buy anything from a store and deliver it, and there are a few of these services in the US. And they also had partnerships with restaurants, and I'm trying to remember the name. I don't know if it'll come back.
I know what you're talking about.
But there were 2 firms that launched. The first one, from what it looked like, got knocked off by the second one, which had a young, sort of 16, 17-year-old founder who raised a chunk of money, but neither of those actually ended up lasting.
It's very nominal margins in the whole business, right? It's end to end. If hardly anyone is making margin, it means you rely on volume, and it's very hard to scale up a business like that. The businesses that do it, Uber, the way it's been funded is by massive amounts of capital that can be dumped in, so they can compete at loss-making prices, and they push out competition. And then what happens on the other side of that is once competition is gone, then they start easing the prices back up, but very hard to kick them off.
Yeah, and I think we've seen probably a little bit of that with ride-sharing prices in New Zealand that have, appear to sort of edge their way up a little bit. I mean this one's going to be interesting to watch, but I think there is potentially an opportunity for that. I don't know how much of an opportunity. The thing with Uber is that they already have the drivers though, and they've got the the Uber Eats piece that's
infrastructure's key with this stuff,
working.
Right?
I can see it being useful in filling a gap that the supermarkets themselves don't cover, and it sounds like they do charge some sort of picking fee to cover the person that has to run around the supermarket. What I noticed actually in Philippines with Uber Eats is when you order from Uber Eats, the driver appears, from the way it looked to me, is the store doesn't necessarily have to have a direct relationship with Uber Eats in a traditional sense that the payment goes to them.
Right.
This was my view of it anyway. It looked like what was happening was the driver went to the restaurant, the driver placed the order, the driver stayed there and waited at that store until the food was ready, and then they brought it to you. They gave you just the standard receipt for the food. It wasn't, and you were paying for that plus the the Uber Eats. I think that was with. Actually, no, that wouldn't have been. And did I say Singapore or Philippines? I was talking Philippines.
Yeah.
And it wasn't Uber because Uber are no longer in the market, so it was whoever it is that's providing that service there.
Right.
But somewhat different from what we're used to. So I think there's a lot of sort of experimentation and different models
keep
going
rotating
on,
around until you find something that works,
market.
right?
Yeah. So anyway, interesting.
Would you use it? Would you get 5 deliveries, 5 grocery items delivered for a healthy premium?
I think sometimes I would. Yeah. I mean, I don't live too far from the supermarket, so it's sort of you work it in, and somebody goes to the supermarket. But then I do use Uber Eats a fair bit. So there's I'm already using that style of service, and it just hasn't been available.
Yeah.
And I think it's fair to say once or twice I have looked for we need some butter or milk or something. It's like, can someone just deliver it? And there hasn't really been an option.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Watch the space, eh?
Yeah. Now the coronavirus situation. This seems to be really continuously moving, or COVID-19 as it's called, and there's another name for it as well, isn't there? Can you remember the other name?
Novel coronavirus, I think it was.
Putting you on the spot.
I think people pick all the names and they're just applying it all in one. COVID-19 novel coronavirus. We know what they mean, though.
Yeah. I guess a couple of things here. We've talked about a little bit before over the last few weeks. Was around the masks that are being worn in China, and that potentially actually has an impact on their mass surveillance systems. And
that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that.
Really fascinating.
Yeah.
Because here you've got the country with the most intense.
We're putting it to effect in Hong Kong, right? Yeah.
Surveillance, and then that doesn't work so well. So
you'll see clear face masks is what you'll see. It'll be the full screen,
Well, I guess my hope is that it doesn't trigger governments to then up their surveillance in other areas of devices and other things, because we have seen a little bit of that in China where software's been put onto devices and so on. I think more to be able to access and download what's on them rather than necessarily provide long-term ongoing.
That's it. There's some
surveillance.
Fascinating epidemiological stuff that you can do with the movements of mobiles, right? So if you're trying to track the outbreak of something and more or less where it started, you can, if you've got the recordings of where people were at what time, you can probably find that out in an incredibly efficient way. I think there'll be some studies, where people do some mass data analysis and can probably say, we could have found where that point of origin was.
Yeah, and I mean, and there has been, I think some. There was a map, online that was sort of showing where.
So as a good as a bad, I'm being tracked. However, it can help us do this, and.
Yeah, well, there's a balance to these things, right? And I guess it's we want technology to be used in ways that are for the better good rather than for the good of a over the top controlling government, shall we say? And we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Now the other thing around coronavirus, there were, I guess, talk of this being or having created the biggest work from home experiment ever.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought, that one. Yeah, it's we've had unfortunately a couple of examples of that in New Zealand, where we've had some events which have caused people to do that, and it's very hard to plan these experiments, but when they happen naturally is when you get to put it to the test, and I think you'll find really positive results out of it, where a lot of business was able to carry on relatively uninterrupted. It changes the flow of it, changes the way people work a little bit, but it's probably best that we can respond like this. It was very different 20 years ago. It would have been very difficult. You didn't have data mobility like you do now.
Yeah, agreed. And look, it's not always the ideal in every scenario, but there are certainly some situations in which people be able to work from all sorts of locations works well. Organisations who work with distributed workforces, today that continues to increase, but then you've also got other people where it doesn't really work. It doesn't work yet, and it may never entirely work, and so I notice in China talked to one organisation where basically all their staff were doing their best to work from home. Someone went out and caught the train or the subway and found that it was 90% empty, compared to usually being completely full.
Yeah.
That tide will start changing, but really interesting experiment.
Telcos would be getting a lot of value out of this time at the moment. If you're providing those data services to people on the move, on the go, either working from home or in other areas, when it's in the one device, it's on the phone, or you can share that data into your laptop. That's incredibly powerful. And having, you would remember what it was like travelling, trying to find internet for freely available Wi-Fi, freely available data. I think that telcos can really help with that. So I'm sure there'll be some great case studies coming out of it.
Yeah, and I think it also has shown some limits. So the feedback I got was that internet for a lot of people in China ground to quite a halt.
Right.
And sometimes this was tied into where there was data being shared or content being shared that the Chinese government weren't, maybe too pleased about.
Right.
And so maybe they were throttling things to try and slow that down. I guess an electronic virus in a sense that they were trying to stop the spread of, possibly. So there was that comment that came back that there was some of that, but it seemed to be that a lot of gaming has been going on in China. People stuck in their homes,
working from home.
What do I do?
Could be quite an experiment.
I've got some work to do. But
well, rather be stuck in your home in Wuhan than on that ship. Imagine what it would be like being stuck on a cruise ship, unable to leave, unable to see family or get any support, and you're pretty dependent on the systems and services around you, right?
Yeah.
Pretty terrible.
Yeah. Yes, so so there's a lot going on as far as this is concerned. Mobile World Congress in Barcelona, which usually be happening over the next few days, has been canned, which was probably not too unexpected after we started hearing about the organisations that would be pulling out, and then the main ones who were continuing to come were Chinese firms, and there'd probably be some travel challenges,
some two-way issues, right?
There, but whether it's the right thing to do, I don't
know. With things outside, China or affected areas. I mean, the Chinese Grand Prix, for instance, has been, or they've said it's delayed. It may return, it may not, and that's possibly pretty valid. I think you'd be particularly worried about the Olympics. I imagine they'll go ahead. But you could be concerned about that if you're preparing for that, because it's something you prepare for a long time, and if that's impacted, that would be pretty bad.
Yeah, well, it seems to be impacting all sorts, and certainly a lot of the technology events I've been looking at that are coming up. There's either been cancellations or there have been quite big, well-known brands. So what I read about today was IBM, pulling out of an event, and a player like that pulling out can make quite an impact on the success of an event, especially if it's if there's a number of those.
Interestingly, looking at the chart of infections daily, it peaked and then started declining from the day that essentially mass media got hold of the story, when the actual controls really started coming in. Now, with the accuracy of the data, we don't know, but it could be that it's having the right effect. So fingers crossed on that one.
Yeah, look, let's hope so. And if technology helps educate and helps bring about a good outcome, and people can keep working from home, then hey, that's good. It's good when tech has a good impact.
Yeah.
It doesn't always quite line up like that. Now, look, sort of somewhat closer to home. Taika Waititi, he did all right with his first Oscar last week.
Yeah, he's quite nervous. I haven't seen that in him before.
It was.
I think he fell asleep in his first time he attended the event, and this time he's definitely awake, but he was a little bit lost for words. So.
Yes, but there was a comment that came back when he was talking about things, and I don't quite know how it came about, but he ended up doing a little bit of a rant about Apple and keyboards. Now, I've been working on and off on the new MacBook Pro 16 that Apple launched late last year as one of the many devices I've been using. I've been trying out the HP Dragonfly, which has gone back to them, and since they've announced a new one of those, that's their sort of super, slim, sleek, sub 1 kilo laptop, which was pretty fantastic, gotta say. They sent me a pretty high end one with a terabyte SSD and LTE and whatnot. But yeah, very nice device, very nice to travel with because it's just so light. Getting back to Apple, some of the comments I saw were and he went on to say that the Apple keyboards being basically impossible to write on, and that they've gotten worse. And he's saying
it's good enough for an Oscar,
but it makes him want to go back to a PC. But clearly still using a Mac. Now, what I don't know is if he's tried the latest and the greatest and the newest keyboard. Now, they don't have a lot of travel in them, but I have no problem using them at all. But certainly it's different from the old days of the big, chunky, typewriter type.
Nice. Do you think he's looking for
keyboards.
A sponsorship, Paul? Maybe Apple got to pick him up. So, they're making their own content now, so maybe they could spin that in. But no, it's interesting. Talking about the big issues, I guess. Really, he was, and how those things can happen. You're on stage in the spotlight before you know it. You're talking about the travel of an Apple key on a keyboard.
Well, I'm sure. It maybe gave him some attention from that maybe he was looking for. I don't know, but look, I think we do get quite focused on the technology that we enjoy
and the minutiae, right? Yeah, absolutely.
But it's going to keep changing. That's the that's the kind of the given, right, with this stuff.
Clearly, we've found his touch point on that stuff. Yeah.
So he didn't make any comments about the USB-C ports, which the MacBooks have got.
You've got a few dongles.
More than anything. Well, interesting on that fact, with dongles and docks and USB-C monitors. I've been doing a little bit of research. I've been trying to get together a good piece for the podcast to talk about, and we've been sort of slowly trying out quite a range of devices that provide that kind of docking capability. And now it's both Mac and Windows, where USB-C is kind of the universal port, so you can plug into, in theory, any of these docks or USB-C monitors and charge, and get an Ethernet connection and get a display, and all the bits and pieces that you need. But it's got a little bit more complex, and it seems as though with some of the changes Apple made with Mac OS Catalina, that there's some challenges with some devices because of their, I think, a 64-bit requirement. And so I've been reading about people saying my USB-C dock no longer works properly on the Mac. And I was been in touch with HP about trying out this incredible monitor that they showed off when I was with them in Tokyo late last year, where they launched the Dragonfly. And it's this 43-inch super wide screen, curve in it. You can either have one device plugged into it and get sort of 4K wide image by 1200, it's about 4000 by 1200 roughly, or 3840, whatever. Or you can actually plug in two devices and
use it as two screens.
And use it as two screens. It's basically like two slightly, I think, slightly bigger than full HD monitors, and and it's got all other cool things in it, like a pop up full HD webcam, which is better than just about any laptop. It's got the facial recognition piece for logging into Windows if you were used to that with Windows Hello and so on. It's pretty cool. And I'm just curious, like, okay, how's this going to work with the Mac? And all the material was like, it's Windows and Linux and Mac and Chrome and this is great, and or Chromebooks, and then in one of the bits of documentation there was a sort of little star, and it says Apple doesn't provide drivers for the Ethernet, so your network connection for Mac, and one other thing, I can't remember what it was, but it usually tends to be, for docking, I want to be able to get that, that gigabit Ethernet connection. That's quite an important.
That's frustrating, isn't it?
Quite an important part. So there's something going on there, and if any listeners have really delved into that and have anything to share, I'd certainly love to hear from you. But it is, it's a little area that has had me scratching my head a little bit. And
they're straddling two OSs, and they've still got the Lightning port as well on their phones, right? So there's a little bit more collapsing onto the same standard would be handy. You know what they say about the standard: if you don't like it, just wait till the next one.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to have USB-C in some form for a little while to come.
I think so.
But I don't know how much they'll be able to extend it. With Thunderbolt 3, I think it's pretty impressive in terms of what can go through that port. But I'll chat more about that monitor once I actually see it and have a chance to try it out. So anyway, that was a little local story. And then the other thing of local relevance, I suppose, was the story that sort of got picked up internationally around, and we've got a lot of this stuff going on in New Zealand, but it's the Next Web was one of the international publications that picked it up, was titled "New Zealand's first AI police officer reports for duty. The Kiwi copper will chat with visitors and police personnel at the Force's HQ in Wellington." Now, I haven't chatted to this particular, I guess, virtual police officer, but I've certainly, tried out some of the stuff, and I think, Tim, we can delve into Ambit shortly and hear a little bit about your role with sort of the behind the scenes chat with that stuff. But I think, it's pleasing to me that we're seeing our organisations, both private and public entities, that aren't sort of sitting back and waiting for technology to be absolutely perfect and fully developed, but actually experimenting
to take a leap.
And trying these things out. It varies in terms of how useful some of the technology is, I suppose, in terms of my interactions with them. But I think over time the their role will increase, and there's a place for this.
There's a place for digital humans, eh?
I think so. I think so. Some might well disagree with me. Now, before we jump into chat about Ambit, I've been using Amazon Echoes and Google Home sort of in varying form for, I guess the Amazon Alexa stuff. I guess since they were first sort of released initially in the US market, and then they've started to become available in New Zealand over the last year or so. Wanted to mention a couple of devices I tried out. We've been trying out the Echo Dot with the clock that came out locally last year.
Cute one, isn't it?
It's really cool because it just looks like the standard Echo Dot, but once it's lit up, it'll show a clock, And then there's certain other things that it will display as well. So you've got a timer, you can have the timer might be counting down on there. It's just dynamically adjusts. You ask about the weather or temperature, and I think it shows that. And we've got them sort of, scattered around a little bit, different ones in different rooms at different times. There's that one. There's the round one with the little, round display on it. That has a camera and whatnot, which is cool. And then they've also got their Echo, I think it's called Echo Plus, as well, which is kind of a mid-size compared to the original sort of taller one. You've been using the latest Echo Show, the Echo Show 5, which has kind of got a, I guess it looks like it's a small touchscreen basically, isn't it? Because they've all got, if they've got a full-blown screen, then it's got to be touch screen.
Right? No, absolutely. I went out looking for one of those Echo Dots with an LED display on it. I thought that'd be quite cool, and I went to Noel Leeming and chatted with his in there, who was really awesome. And he said, have you heard about this? It's the Echo Show, and they had a hell of a good special on. It ended up being a similar price, and it's the full Amazon Alexa experience with the screen. So you can say, show me pictures of elephants, and what do you know, elephants pop up, or you can say, show me my photo album. You can do all the same things that you can do through voice, but you get this added thing of the visual component, which you realise becomes very useful if you've got a bunch of options.
Yeah.
Because voice is good. If you ask me a question, and there's 17 answers, you'd probably throw me out of the podcast booth if I started reading out all those 17 answers.
Yeah.
But a screen's a good place to show a lot of information, and so when there's a handful of things to show, popping it up on the screen works well.
Yep, and you can get, with music, you can get the lyrics, coming up on the screen.
The controls up on screen. Yeah, that's right.
It's nice. So I think, Amazon are doing a pretty good job with their Echo devices. On the Google front, I tried out for a little while the JBL LinkView Smart Display, which is JBL speakers.
Snappy title, isn't it?
And then Google Assistant sort of built in touchscreen, and once it was set up, before I knew it, there's all these photos flying across the screen, and my son's looking, going, oh, what's that? And it just basically. I'd linked it to my account, and it was, I'd probably given it okay to do a slideshow, and just pulling out all these random photos and
gives you some interesting
things,
privacy
which is quite
concerns,
nice. So you want to be, again, think through what you're putting into your Google Photos collection and so on. So whether it's taking a photo of a confidential document for work onto your device that then gets synced up to a cloud.
Or just things that are in your calendar, like if you've got a job interview or something like that, you don't necessarily want that Amazon device at your existing employer. Maybe. Tell me what's in your calendar.
Little bit of wisdom to some of these things, So look, I think it's good to see that that developing and that now look, we're all going New Zealand, and there was for the majority of time these things have been available. They weren't fully operational in New Zealand, but here we are, and there are just so many things you can do with them, from setting little timers. Seems to be great for parenting. Set bedtime timer 5 minutes. And it's 5 minutes before bedtime, or you set it in advance. And it's so nice that it's not me that's saying, hey, it's time Alexa to go to bed. It's the technology.
The thing I quite like is at the other end of the day, at the beginning, so what the show does, because it's got the screen, it's quite bright, it starts turning on the display slowly and make it brighter and brighter in the room. But I had a little misstep with it. I said, Alexa, wake me up in the morning at 6:30 to forest sounds.
Oh, that sounds nice.
So I thought, that'll be a good one, and so I drift off to sleep.
Birds singing, and
that was my idea.
Yeah.
Anyway, so in the morning, 6:30 a.m, I was waking up to what I think was a forest being cut down. Collection of chainsaws. It really was something out of the parts of the Amazon that we don't want to lose. And so that was a little bit of a learning experience. I have to maybe test the alarm sounds before I do that.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh, classic. Okay. So on to your world, and tell listeners who aren't familiar with Ambit-AI, how long you've been around. What are you doing? Where are you at in the sort of in your startup journey?
Yeah, we kicked off almost exactly 3 years ago, actually, with 3 co-founders, myself and a technical co-founder and our CEO. So Josh and Gareth joined me, and for a number of months it was an idea, and we went out and we started testing this idea. The idea was that people want to get things done, they can get it done efficiently. The most popular apps in the world are all messaging apps. So if people are moving to messaging, and people want to message businesses, and a quarter of all Facebook Messenger messages are with a business. So,
Really?
yeah, it's really misunderstood. That's a major small and big business platform. I had someone the other day saying, man, when we put something out on Facebook, we get all these people contacting us through Messenger. Can't we just turn the channel off? I said, no, listen to them. So that's the problem we were looking to solve. So essentially, think of it as customer service at scale. So we create a human conversation, human type experience, but we're automated, which means that if you've got an issue and you want to contact some brand that you've interacted with and ask them a question or return something, you're talking or more particularly texting a computer, a robot of ours sitting off in the cloud, but there's no wait time. It's dealt with really quickly. It's very efficient, etc.
And I like that efficiency thing, because I think anybody listening to this who uses the telephone will have experienced spending a lot of time, on hold or waiting for somebody to go
on hold
something up,
right?
all those things. And so, if you can get the result from, an artificially intelligent, bot that you can chat with, that's pretty good. How do you find those things that are the right
use
fit
cases
for an organisation to take advantage? Because I think a lot of organisations, they don't want to be missing out on the advantages of the technology, but trying to work out, well, where is this going to be helpful to our customers and helpful to us isn't always obvious immediately.
Well, the best thing to do to get started, that's a question, is to start small and then learn rapidly, right? So you don't want to plan how to create the ultimate digital employee and spend 3 years rolling it out. The technology changes in that time. You want to choose one small thing. And so the things that work are, if you pick something within your organisation where you're dealing with a high volume, but where the marginal value that's being delivered through that is relatively small. Like, for instance, a lot of companies, a lot of shops, for instance, they've got opening hours. There's not a lot of value add with a person telling a person on the phone or through a text message what their shop opening hours. That's a good area to automate. So there's a handful of questions, and it's like the 80-20 thing. 80% of the questions are usually highly automatable. 20% of them are going to be best dealt with by people. And you don't want to confuse those. You don't want to force people through some really convoluted AI process when a human would be better at it. If it's complex, put a person on it. They do a great job and they like it more.
Yeah.
So within customer service, we've got one of our clients is Glassons, and Glassons had the problem that they had a good problem. They're a very successful business and they were growing fast, and as a result they had a lot of inquiry coming into customer service, and they said to us, how can we deal with this in an efficient way? So we worked through with them to work out what are the questions that people are asking. It was particularly for their online business. So how much is postage? When will my parcel arrive? Can I exchange this? That kind of thing. So those few questions made up the vast majority of what was coming into customer service, and it's people on the phones, and it's not very exciting stuff to answer. And then alternatively, they're asking the opening hours of stores, that kind of thing. What's the location? What's my nearest store? So we built that for them and launched that. And as a result, the people on the team they're thrilled because they don't have to deal with those areas anymore. Now, some people still come through, but a lot of people go through to the digital employee. But the people on the team are able to help with the complex ones. Now, there's a couple of unexpected or originally unplanned benefits. There's no wait time if you're talking with the digital employee. It's called Charlie. And you go straight through and it immediately helps you, and it's always there any time of day or night.
Yep.
The other thing is the people that do go through to the phone call, there's not much wait time for them either, because you've volume shifted into a different channel. And so people like it. They actually come back to it.
Yeah.
And it does cool things, like if you order something, say you order a couple of shirts one day, then you go back the next day, hey, when's my order arriving? It can say, oh, is that the couple of shirts that you ordered? It can remember you. It's almost like having a personal shopping assistant.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Well, I'm very keen to see how it progresses, but it seems as though the business has moved quite quickly for you.
Yeah.
I was in the new Noel Leeming store in Auckland's Broadway, Newmarket, and I lack patience with these things. I'm always curious to try the technology, but you partnered with because you've done the sort of chat behind the scenes, and then there's what was
it's a great Kiwi story,
actually. Technology. They've rebranded, haven't they?
Yeah, they're called Unique now. So Unique created the digital avatar, the visual side.
Yep.
We worked with a company called Jade Software, another great New Zealand tech company, and they built the conversations and some of the integrations around it. And then we're the platform behind it that's powering it. So some people refer to us as the brain or the underlying infrastructure for making that work.
Nice.
But it's very much a combination of companies there, working with Noel Leeming, a good New Zealand company, which is part of the Warehouse Group.
Yeah, no, it's just cool to see these things happening, and I wish you all the best, and we'll look forward to seeing where to from here. For listeners, if there are any that are within organisations that are interested in this stuff, how do they get in touch, and what are the platforms that your technology is sort of relevant to? You mentioned Facebook, so you can tie into sort of Facebook Messenger.
We support Facebook. So if you're working, if you've got a company and it's got any aspect of customer service at scale, we're the company to talk with. So good examples are retail, telcos, utilities, etc. We've got a lot of customers asking high volume of questions. That's where we work. The best way to find me is actually through LinkedIn.
Okay.
So if search me there.
Tim Warren on LinkedIn.
Tim Warren on LinkedIn. It's pretty easy to find me, and just connect through and get started that way. A lot of our inquiries come through that.
Excellent. Oh, that's great. Thanks everyone for listening in. That's us for this week on the New Zealand Tech Podcast. We'll be back again next week. You can now find us on LinkedIn. That's our sort of newest channel.
Right.
Although we do get chat messages through Facebook, so you can always try that channel, and you can email me directly as well, paul.spain@nztechpodcast.com will get to me. So pretty easy to track down. If you've got anything you'd like to feedback from the show, and look, it's always appreciated if you enjoyed listening. Please share the show with a friend or a colleague. All right, thanks everyone. Catch you next week. See ya. No, it was good.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah. Nice and easy.
Done that a few times now, I can tell.
I don't usually do that spiel at the end to share it with friends and stuff.
Oh, no.
I usually
no, I think it's worthwhile.
But every now and then I think, should
you could loop in some pre or post roll for that stuff, make your life easy.
Oh, but I hate that sort of automation though when it comes to content. Where